Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry Suttervey at the movies. So there was a great quote from the movie Peeping Tom, a controversial 1960 British film directed by Michael Powell, which pretty much ruined his career after that. This film came out the same year as Psycho, but Peeping Tom did some extraordinary damage to the reputation of director Michael Powell, partly because of the story, which is about a guy who films women in distress and whom he invites to his home, or whatever the situation is, and kills them as he's filming them. So there's a great quote in there, delivered by, I can't remember if it was his aunt or someone else, who said, "All this filmmaking isn't healthy." And this can be attributed, this quote, as well to watching movies. Now, what's interesting is that in the last month or so, I haven't actually seen a new movie. And mainly because I'm working on a project right now, which hopefully I will finish before the end of May. But it's been interesting to me that it was almost like taking a little break, and I still love watching films. But the question is too if you watch too many movies, is that healthy or is it unhealthy? And my feeling is that I approach it from the standpoint that when I watch a picture, I am analyzing it. I'm sort of trying to sense what it is that I'm watching from all sorts of different parameters, visually, the acting, the performances, and of course the story. If it leaves a lasting impact, the film, then I sort of have to go back to it. I can't quite ignore it, and especially since I write reviews, which I haven't really written a full review in about a month now. The point is that I'm really studying the film, and if it leaves an imprint, a strong, lasting impression, then I can't really just ignore it and then move on to something else. Now, in a sense, maybe that's a good thing that I never became officially any sort of film critic whatsoever. In the 90s, as I think mentioned before, many videos back, I used to write for a small town newspaper in near Shore, New York. I think it was near Port Jefferson. It was called the Village Times. And I would write reviews, and I got paid for them. It wasn't certainly a whole lot of money, but I got paid. But even then, I mean, I wasn't watching a whole bunch of films. But there was a period from the 80s up until pretty much, let's say, 1999, 2000, 2001, let's say, where I was watching just about any and every film I could in a theater. Not that I saw every film that came out. Of course, sometimes there were certain films I chose not to see. Um, Rob Schneider in The Animal, Rob Schneider in Deuce Bigelow, which I saw later on video. In other words, I still felt like there were certain films I was going to go out of my way to see that weren't really being promoted, which I always looked at. Um, those films that just didn't quite get through the mainstream meter. In other words, they were not pop culture favorites. They were not getting big box office. So small independent films I would see quite frequently, and there are many of them that I still remember to this day, and some which I've forgotten about. In addition to commercial films and so on and so forth. But even in those days, I mean, I was seeing a lot. There were certain films I should not have seen in a theater. So Cops and Robertsons with uh, Chevy Chase would have been best suited to a home video experience in those days or on cable, not in a movie theater. Even though I paid a matinee price. But I saw The Crow in theaters. I mean, I saw even other films that nobody ever talks about, like the Browning version, which was a remake with Albert Finney. So I was seeing left and right a whole bunch of films. The Last Butterfly with Tom Courtenay, which I would like to see again someday. That was about the Holocaust, and he was a clown, which brings up the day the clown cried. Except that I don't I don't even remember if he I don't remember if he was a German in that film or not. Tom Courtenay, many of you would know probably best from the movie The Dresser, which also starred Albert Finney. So you see, yeah, this is what it's all about. References, 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 remembering actors here and there. But even then, I started to realize maybe I'm just going a little too far. I mean, I would see certain films that I thought certainly merited a watch in the theater, and others that I knew didn't, and others that eclipsed, once again, as I said before, the mainstream meter. Films that people were not talking about, I would usually venture out to go to see. So, can you see too many movies? And the answer is yes, you can. But those that leave a lasting impression are usually the ones you want to return to. And you still want to think about them. And usually, not always, but usually, if it's a film that I really thought was fantastic, and I'm still not sure how to really address how I felt about it, even though I know it was really good, then what happens is I wait a while before I see it again, because it will still stay with me, and I know it will, and then I'll review it. And I've done that with a few films. Infrequently, I would do that. Sometimes I felt I had to come right out of the movie theater and write my review almost immediately. So that's how I feel. Now, so it can be unhealthy, but it depends on how you approach it. You know, it's possible to see too many films, of course. And they can be like drugs, but it's a good drug. I mean, it's a drug that I took during the 80s. I didn't take any drugs during the 80s when I was a teenager. But movies, oh yeah. I mean, I went to the movies a lot in the 80s. And by virtue of living only 2 blocks away from a movie theater, or 6 blocks away from another Cinema City movie theater, which actually I'm going to put the link in here for the Cinema City 5 that used to exist in Fresh Meadows, New York, where I used to live. I'm going to leave the link. Now it's a housing complex, but at any rate, in virtue of being close to a video store, which is no longer there, of course, hardly any video stores anymore, the Video Connection. So, but I would see all kinds of films, but certain films I would see more than once in a movie theater if I had the chance. So, of course, in 1985, I saw Back to the Future 4 times. I mean, I just kept returning. I just enjoyed it every single time. It's one of the few perfect movies of that decade. And so, but I would see all other kinds of films, Robert Redford and The Natural, Splash, Supergirl, Dune by David Lynch, you know. So a lot of these were seen in theaters. But the point is, do you reach a point, because I didn't have my critical faculties in place yet in those days, 40 years ago. Now I do. But sometimes I think it is good to just take a step back, you know, because, as I said, I'm glad that I'm not a regular film critic at all, or I'm not certainly a paid one. I used to be, but not anymore. But that's okay, because if I have to see 3 films a day, I just might go crazy. Because then you have to go back and you have to think about what you saw and whether it leaves any lasting impression, and it's just, it's a bit much. But they can be like drugs, but you have to treat it with a little modicum of restraint, just a little. And you have to also learn that, you know, you don't have to see everything right away. Sometimes when there's a big movie, I mean, I barely go to the movie theater anymore. If there is a film that's playing that seems to be doing quite well and everybody's talking about it, give it some time first. You don't have to be the first one right out of the box to see the movie and comment on it because it's causing a sensation, which is rare nowadays for that to happen. So movies are usually, now that it's just sort of something that a lot of people would prefer to do at home, because going to movies is expensive, and if you want to buy popcorn and everything else and you bring in somebody with you, it's more expensive if you're paying for the whole thing. So you don't ever really know what you're in store for, but that's really there are limitations to everything, and so your viewing habits have to have some measure of limitation. So they can be like drugs, but like everything else, used with restraint. Now, having said that, there are many films that if I decide I'm going to do a full analysis of a film, practically shot by shot, which I don't do nearly as much as I used to. When I did it, it was infrequent. Then you're spending a whole lot of time with it, and then you have to see if you still get some measure of an emotional response from it, and what it is that you're analyzing. And there are many different aspects to every film. So you're looking at it from the standpoint of the story, the narrative, the roles, the characters, the uh, everything. It's just, and also you're weighing the film against other films that are similar to it, or other films made by the same director, right? Especially the writer, and you can go on and on and on. And that is a healthy way to do it. I think it's a good idea to occasionally break down a film and study it, and that is at the loss of watching other films. So, what do the rest of you think? Are movies like drugs for you? Do you see too many movies? Do you see not enough movies? Do you prefer more, let's say, episodic television, particularly Netflix, or binging on a series, or whatever the case may be? Let me your thoughts. And can it be unhealthy? And it's like I said, just treat it with restraint. Don't get overwhelmed, is what I would say. But let me your thoughts. Tell me what you think. If you like what you hear and you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to my channel. And if you are a subscriber, please hit that notification bell for future uploads. And I will have the link right below for Cinema City 5, a former theater that I went to many times back in the 80s. So, that's all I got to say about that. This is Jerry Sadovia at the Movies, signing off.